I don't even know how to start this, but I guess there's no easy way. My name's Ron Jameson. I'm 46, been married to my wife Chrissy for 18 years. We've got 2 kids, a house, the whole American dream package. At least, I thought we did, until last night. Chrissy sat me down in the living room like she was about to tell me she backed into a mailbox or something. Real calm, real collected. Then, with this forced little frown, she says, "Ron, I need to talk to you about something important." And man, I never in a million years expected what came next. She told me she'd been having an affair. Just like that. No hesitation. No shame. And here's the kicker, she framed it like she was doing some damn charity work. "It's not what you think," she kept saying. "I've been helping someone. He lost his wife last year. He was broken. He needed me, Ron." She said his name was Eric. Some guy she met at her book club or yoga or wherever the hell she goes during the day while I'm at work. She spun this whole story about how he was grieving, how he had no one, and how she became his light. And apparently, for the past year, she's been his light in more ways than one. I just sat there staring at her, my hands gripping the arms of my chair so tight I thought I might snap the wood. A year. An entire year of her sneaking off to help this guy, then coming home to me like nothing was wrong. And here's the part that really sent me over the edge, she wasn't even apologizing. Instead, she had the nerve to say, "I still love you, Ron. I never stopped. This was just something I had to do. Eric still needs me, but once he's better, I'll come back to you fully." Like I was supposed to just wait around until she was done playing nurse to her side guy. I don't remember standing up, but suddenly I was on my feet pacing, running my hands through my hair because I could feel this rage bubbling up in my chest, and I knew if I didn't move, I was going to explode. "So what?" I finally managed to say. "I'm supposed to just be okay with my wife screwing some guy because he's sad? That's what you're telling me?" Her face twisted up, and she actually had the audacity to look annoyed. "You're being really closed-minded about this," she said, like I was the one in the wrong. "I thought you'd understand. I thought you'd support me." Support her. Support her. I let out this short, bitter laugh. "You thought I'd support you cheating on me?" She crossed her arms, exasperated now. "You never understood my need to help people, Ron. That's always been our problem. You get so caught up in what's right and wrong that you don't see the bigger picture. This isn't about you." Oh, that did it. That was the moment something in me snapped. "This isn't about me." I shouted. "Chrissy, you broke our marriage vows. You lied to me every single day for a year, and now you're standing here acting like you're some kind of saint for it." Her eyes flashed with anger then, and she threw her hands up. "See? This is why I didn't tell you sooner. You always react like this, Ron. You never try to see my side of things." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like talking to someone who lived on a different planet. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't remorseful. She was doubling down, making me the bad guy for not understanding her betrayal. The argument spiraled from there, voices rising, words getting harsher. I was fuming, heart pounding, and yeah, I'll admit it, I'd had a few drinks before she dropped this bombshell on me. Not enough to make me forget, but enough to make my emotions raw. When I told her to get out, she rolled her eyes like I was some irrational child throwing a tantrum. "Fine," she said, grabbing her coat. "I'll go stay with Eric until you calm down." And just like that, she walked out. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat there in our empty house, staring at the walls, trying to figure out how the hell my life had just imploded in a single conversation. I had no idea it was about to get even worse. I woke up to silence. Or more accurately, I never really slept. I must have dozed off at some point because when I opened my eyes, it was morning. My mouth was dry, my head was pounding, and my whole body felt heavy, like the weight of last night was physically pressing down on me. For a second, there was this brief moment where I forgot. That hazy, half-asleep moment where your brain hasn't caught up yet. And then bam. Chrissy. Eric. The affair. Her leaving. I sat up fast, heart hammering, and looked around like I expected to see her standing there, saying it was all some horrible joke. But the house was empty. Too empty. The kids. I scrambled out of bed and rushed down the hall to check their rooms. Both beds were empty. That's when full-blown panic set in. Chrissy wouldn't take them, would she? She wouldn't just up and leave with our kids to go stay with. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I snatched it up, hands shaking. A text from Chrissy. Don't freak out. I took the kids to Eric's for the night. They were asleep when I left, and I didn't want them waking up to fighting. We can talk about this later. I stared at the screen, my mind short-circuiting. She took them to his house. Our kids, my kids, slept under the same roof as the man who helped wreck my marriage. The rage that hit me was different from last night. Last night was hot, fiery, all-consuming. This was ice-cold. A deep simmering fury that made my hands tighten into fists and my jaw lock so hard it hurt. I dialed her number. She didn't pick up. Dialed again. Straight to voicemail. I stormed downstairs, grabbed my keys, and was halfway out the door before I stopped myself. What was I gonna do? Bang on his door? Drag my kids out of their kicking and screaming? Give her exactly what she wanted, an excuse to paint me as the crazy, unreasonable husband? No. I had to be smart about this. I forced myself to take a deep breath and went back inside. I needed a plan. I needed advice. And there was one person I knew would have something to say about all this. Chrissy's dad. I had always gotten along with her parents, especially her father, Dave. He was an old-school, no-nonsense kind of guy. He loved Chrissy, sure, but he was the type to call out crap when he saw it. I grabbed my phone again and texted him. Dave, I need to talk to you. It's about Chrissy. It's bad. Less than a minute later, my phone rang. Ron, he said, his voice sharp with concern. What happened? I let out a shaky breath. She cheated on me, Dave. For a year. And last night, she left to be with him. Took the kids with her. Silence. Then, a slow, heavy exhale. Son of a, he cut himself off. Where are you now? Home. I'm coming over. And just like that, I had backup. I didn't know what my next move was, but I knew one thing for damn sure, this wasn't over. Dave showed up at my house in under 20 minutes. He must have broken every traffic law in the book because the man was still in his pajamas, wearing an old flannel robe over a white t-shirt and sweatpants. He looked half awake but furious. The second he stepped inside, he didn't waste time with small talk. Tell me everything. I did. I told him how Chrissy sat me down like she was announcing the weather and admitted to a year-long affair. I told him how she spun it like she was doing some kind of charity work for a grieving man. And finally, I told him the part that made my blood boil the most, how she took our kids and brought them to his house. By the time I finished, Dave was pacing my living room, rubbing a hand over his face. I don't even recognize her in this, he muttered. She actually said she'd come back fully, once this guy doesn't need her anymore? I nodded stiffly. Like I'm supposed to just sit tight and wait for my wife to be done playing house with another man. Dave let out a harsh breath, shaking his head. This is insanity. Then, suddenly, his expression hardened. Ron, you need to be careful. You need to think long-term. What do you mean? He stopped pacing and faced me head-on. Chrissy's already rewriting the story in her head. I've seen it before. She's not thinking logically, she's thinking in justifications. She believes she's helping this guy, right? She's already painted herself as the good person in this. And if you're not careful, she's gonna start painting you as the bad one. I swallowed hard, the meaning behind his words sinking in. She left to be with him because I was too angry, I said bitterly. That's what she told me last night. Dave nodded grimly. See? She's setting the groundwork. If this goes south, if you divorce, if this gets messy, what do you think she's gonna tell people? What do you think she's gonna tell the kids? A cold realization settled over me. She's gonna say I was the problem. Exactly. I sat down heavily on the couch, my mind racing. For so long, I had seen Chrissy as my wife, my partner, the mother of my children. I had never, ever considered that she might turn against me like this. But now I wasn't so sure. Ron, Dave said firmly, you need to start protecting yourself. Legally. Financially. Emotionally. This isn't just about your marriage anymore. This is about your kids. I looked up at him. What do I do? He exhaled. First thing? You need to document everything. Every conversation. Every text. If she sends anything that sounds like an admission of guilt, save it. You need to get ahead of this before she spins the narrative. I nodded slowly. It made sense. It felt cold, calculating, but what choice did I have? And second, he continued, you need to talk to a lawyer. Now. That hit me like a punch to the gut. I wasn't ready for that. I didn't want to be thinking about divorce. I wanted my family back. But deep down, I knew Dave was right. I rubbed a hand over my face. You think she'd really try to turn this around on me? Dave's expression softened, but there was no hesitation in his voice. Ron, I love my daughter, but I also know my daughter. And right now? She's in deep. She's in full self-preservation mode. And that means she'll do whatever she has to in order to justify this, whether that means making you the villain or not. The words cut deep, but I needed to hear them. I had been blindsided last night. I had let my emotions take over. But now? Now I had to think differently. Chrissy thought I'd just sit back and accept this. She had no idea who she was dealing with. After Dave left, I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone. Part of me wanted to call Chrissy and demand she bring the kids home right now. Another part of me knew that if I lost my temper, she'd just use it against me. Dave's words kept playing in my head. She's already rewriting the story. She's setting the groundwork. I needed to be smart about this. So instead of calling Chrissy, I called someone else. Bob Clarkson, my boss. Bob was in his late 50s, built like an old linebacker, with the kind of no BS attitude you develop after decades in the corporate world. More importantly, he'd been through a nasty divorce himself. If there was anyone who could give me some real-world advice, it was him. The second he picked up, I skipped the pleasantries. Bob, I need your advice. My wife cheated on me. She just took my kids to stay at her lover's house. What the hell do I do? There was a brief silence on the other end. Then Bob sighed. Well, sh*t. Yeah, Bob swore. I won't, but you can imagine. Yeah, I muttered. That about sums it up. All right, listen, he said, his voice serious. First things first, you call a lawyer. Today. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Today. That's what Dave said. Dave's a smart man, Bob replied. Ron, I've seen guys like you, good men, blindsided by cheating wives, thinking things will just work themselves out. They don't. If she's already pulling moves like taking your kids to his place, she's testing you. Seeing what she can get away with. If you don't push back now, she'll walk all over you. I clenched my jaw. I don't want this to turn into a war, Bob. Bob let out a dry chuckle. Doesn't matter what you want, buddy. You're in a war. You just don't realize it yet. That hit me like a punch to the gut. I don't even know where to start, I admitted. Start with protecting yourself, Bob said firmly. Chrissy might not seem like the type to play dirty, but let me tell you, divorce makes everyone play dirty. You need to assume she's already talking to a lawyer. You need to assume she's thinking about custody, finances, assets, everything. If you wait too long, you're screwed. I swallowed hard. How do I even find the right lawyer? Bob didn't hesitate. I'll text you a number. Guy handled my son's divorce. He's a shark. You need a shark. I exhaled slowly. All right. There was a brief pause before Bob's voice softened just a little. Look, Ron. I know this is hell. But you can't let emotions drive your decisions right now. You need to think long-term. Your kids are watching. Stay calm. Stay smart. And don't, for the love of God, let Chrissy bait you into blowing up. That's what she wants. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Thanks, Bob. Any time, he said. Then before hanging up, he added, and Ron? Screw that guy she's with. Seriously. I almost smiled. The first move. After I got off the phone, I stared at my reflection in the dark TV screen. I looked like hell, tired, angry, and lost. But I wasn't going to stay lost. Chrissy expected me to roll over and accept this. She expected me to let my anger cloud my judgment while she quietly took control of the situation. Not happening. I pulled up my messages and texted her. We need to talk about the kids. Call me when you can. Short. Civil, no emotion. I didn't know what her next move was, but I knew mine. I was getting my kids back. And I wasn't letting Chrissy run the show anymore. I didn't have to wait long. 15 minutes after I sent the text, my phone buzzed. Chrissy. I stared at the screen for a second, bracing myself. Then I answered. Ron, she said, her voice annoyingly calm, like she wasn't the one who just blew our entire life apart. I was going to call you soon anyway. Where are the kids? I asked, keeping my tone flat. They're fine, she said, brushing past the question. We had a nice night. They didn't ask too many questions, and I didn't want to upset them, so I kept things simple. I told them we just needed some space to figure things out. My grip on the phone tightened. Space to figure things out. Chrissy, I said slowly, you took them to another man's house. Do you understand how messed up that is? She sighed. Ron, I knew you'd react like this. That's why I took them. I needed time to explain things to them in a way that wasn't angry. You were too emotional last night. I clenched my teeth. Of course I was emotional. My wife told me she's been cheating for a year. Oh, here we go, she muttered. I knew this was going to turn into a pity party for you. I actually had to pull the phone away from my ear for a second to make sure I heard that right. A pity party? I repeated. Are you serious? Ron, I told you, I love you. I never wanted to hurt you. But Eric needed me. And I needed, she stopped herself. I pounced. You needed what, Chrissy? Silence. I pressed on. You needed what? Attention? Excitement? A way to justify lying to your husband for a year. Her voice turned cold. I needed to feel needed, Ron. Something you haven't done for a long time. I actually laughed. Oh, so this is my fault now? It's not about blame, she snapped. It's about understanding. If you actually listened instead of attacking me, you'd see that I didn't do this to hurt you. You didn't do this to hurt me? I repeated, my voice rising. Chrissy, you slept with another man for a year. You took our kids to his house. How the hell do you expect me to take that? She groaned like I was being so unreasonable. This is exactly what I was afraid of. You're being impossible. I took a deep breath. Bob's words rang in my head. Stay calm. Stay smart. Don't let her bait you. Fine. You're bringing them home, I said, my voice steady. Today. She hesitated. Ron, I don't think. I'm not asking, Chrissy. She let out a long sigh. I'll bring them by in the afternoon. But I think we should all sit down together and talk. As a family. I almost laughed at the irony of that. We're not a family right now, I said coldly. You made sure of that. I hung up before she could respond. I sat back, my heart pounding. The conversation didn't go the way I wanted. Not that there was any winning here, but I got what I needed. The kids were coming home. I wasn't stupid. This wasn't over. Chrissy still had her claws in this situation. She was testing boundaries, seeing what she could get away with. But now? Now I wasn't just reacting. I was playing the game. I scrolled through my phone and pulled up the number Bob had sent me. The divorce lawyer. I stared at it for a long second, my thumb hovering over the call button. Then I pressed it. Chrissy thought I was just going to accept this. She was dead wrong. When Chrissy pulled into the driveway that afternoon, I was already standing at the door, arms crossed, watching as she stepped out of the car like nothing had happened. The kids hopped out too, oblivious to the storm their mother had created, and for a moment, I had to swallow back the lump in my throat. They had no idea. They were just happy to be home. Chrissy gave me a forced smile, the kind that said she was still trying to control the narrative. See? They're fine, she said lightly, shutting the car door. No need to be so dramatic. I ignored her and bent down as my son Jake ran up to me. Hey buddy, I said, ruffling his hair. My daughter Sophie was quieter, giving me a small hug before looking between Chrissy and me, eyes full of questions. She was older, 12, old enough to sense something was wrong. I wasn't about to lie to her, but I wasn't going to explode in front of them either. Go inside, guys, I said, forcing a smile. I made your favorite cookies. That got them moving, and as soon as they were inside, I turned to Chrissy, dropping the act. She sighed, crossing her arms. Can we at least talk like adults now? I stepped closer, lowering my voice. I already told you, Chrissy. You don't get to rewrite this. You don't get to make me the villain for reacting to your betrayal. Her lips pressed into a thin line. I knew you'd do this. I knew you'd turn this into a fight instead of something we could handle maturely. Maturely? I let out a sharp laugh. Maturely would have been not cheating. Maturely would have been telling me instead of sneaking around for a year. She glanced at the house, lowering her voice. Keep your voice down. Why? I shot back. Afraid they'll hear the truth. She groaned, rubbing her temples. This is exhausting, Ron. I came here hoping we could have a real conversation, but you're so caught up in your own anger that you can't see the bigger picture. I stepped closer, my hands clenched. And what's the bigger picture, Chrissy? That I should accept this? That I should just wait for you to be done with your little affair? She shook her head, exasperated. I told you, Ron. Eric needed me. I didn't mean for this to happen. It just... Oh, don't, I cut in, my voice sharp. Don't you dare give me that "it just happened" nonsense. A year, Chrissy. You made the choice every single day to keep lying to me. She folded her arms tighter, but I saw it, her bravado cracking, just a little. I still love you, she muttered. I felt my stomach turn. You don't love me, I said, shaking my head. You love what I provided. Stability. Comfort. A safety net. If you actually loved me, you wouldn't have done this. She looked away. For the first time since this all started, she didn't have some snarky response. I took a deep breath. We're done, Chrissy. I talked to a lawyer. That got her attention. Her head snapped back toward me, eyes wide. You what? You heard me, I said. This marriage is over. You made sure of that. Her jaw clenched. So that's it? You're not even going to try. I let out a humorless laugh. Try what? To win you back? To wait until you decide I'm good enough again? I shook my head. No. I'm done being your backup plan. She looked like she wanted to argue, but then something in her shifted. Her expression hardened, her lips curling into something almost smug. Well, she said, tilting her head, if you want a war, Ron, I guess that's what you'll get. There it was. The mask had slipped. The sweet, remorseful act was gone. And just like that, I knew Dave and Bob had been right. Chrissy wasn't just going to accept this. She was going to fight. She was going to twist things, manipulate, turn this into my fault. But I was ready now. She thought she could control how this ended. She was wrong. I stood there on the front porch, watching Chrissy drive away, my jaw tight, my fists clenched. She had thrown down the gauntlet, made it clear she wasn't going to let this end peacefully. And honestly? Good. Because I wasn't rolling over for her. Inside, the kids were in the kitchen, munching on the cookies I'd made. I forced myself to shake off the conversation, walking in with a smile like everything was fine. I wasn't about to let them get caught in the crossfire of whatever battle Chrissy was gearing up for. Hey, Dad. Sophie asked, glancing up from her plate. Why was Mom acting so weird? I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. Your mom and I are figuring some things out, I said. But I promise, no matter what happens, you and Jake come first. Always. She studied me for a second, then nodded slowly, like she knew I wasn't telling her everything but decided not to push. Jake, oblivious as ever, just dunked his cookie in milk and grinned. These are awesome, Dad. I ruffled his hair, but my mind was already elsewhere. I needed to get ahead of Chrissy before she started spreading her version of the story. After getting the kids settled, I went to my office and pulled out my phone. First, I called Dave. She just left, I told him. Let me guess, he sighed. She didn't take it well. She basically told me if I wanted a war, I'd get one. There was a pause. Then Dave muttered, Damn it, Chrissy. I rubbed my temple. I need to start covering my bases. You said to document everything. I've got texts, I've got my own notes, but I need to start making moves before she does. You're thinking custody, Dave said knowingly. I exhaled. Yeah. Dave was quiet for a moment. Ron, you know I love my daughter, but if she's taking the kids to that guy's house, she's already making bad decisions as a mother. You need to be ready for anything. I will be, I said. And I'm calling the lawyer today. Good, Dave said. And Ron. Yeah. I don't say this lightly, but don't trust her. Not with anything. I swallowed hard. I won't. After I hung up with Dave, I called Bob's lawyer contact. A woman answered, Sharp, professional, all business. Laura Phillips, she said. I took a breath. Ms. Phillips, my name is Ron Jameson. I think I need a divorce lawyer. There was a brief silence. Then she said, tell me everything. And so I did. By the time I finished, she let out a slow breath. Your wife is already making moves. Taking the kids to another man's house? That's reckless. And if she's trying to position herself as the reasonable one, we need to counter that now. What do I do? First, don't leave the house. It's yours, and leaving can hurt you legally. Second, start tracking everything. Any texts, any calls, any interactions, save them. And third, stay calm. If she wants to bait you into an argument, don't take it. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. And the kids? If custody becomes a fight, we'll need to prove she's not acting in their best interest. The fact that she took them to this other man's house is already a strike against her. We need more. More. That word sat heavy in my chest. Ron, Laura said, her voice softer now, I know this is painful. But you need to start thinking strategically. The moment she realizes you're not backing down, she's going to escalate. I clenched my jaw. I'll be ready. Because Chrissy thought she could control this story. She thought she could play the victim, twist things in her favor. But I wasn't going to let her. She wanted a war? She was about to find out exactly what that meant. The next few days felt like walking on a tightrope. Chrissy didn't text, didn't call, didn't even check in about the kids. That alone told me everything I needed to know. She was planning her next move. So I planned mine. First thing, I followed Laura's advice. I created a folder on my computer and started documenting everything. Texts, dates, times, anything that could be useful if this turned ugly. I wrote down exactly what happened the night she confessed, how she framed the affair like she was doing some kind of community service. I saved the text where she admitted to taking the kids to Eric's house. Every time I saw the words on the screen, my blood boiled all over again. Second, I made sure to spend as much time with the kids as possible. I wasn't about to let them feel like their world was falling apart, even if mine was. We went to the park, had movie nights, and I made sure they knew nothing between them and me was going to change. Sophie still seemed suspicious. She asked once, "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" I didn't lie. "We're figuring things out," I said. "But no matter what, I'm here for you and Jake." She didn't seem convinced. She was smart, too smart. But she let it go. For now. Then, on Friday afternoon, Chrissy finally made contact. "Can we talk?" "In person." I stared at the text for a full minute before responding. "Fine. Come by at 7. When she showed up, she was dressed like she was ready for a business meeting. Hair done, makeup perfect, wearing one of those fitted jackets she always wore when she wanted to feel in control. I didn't invite her in. We stood on the porch, the setting sun casting long shadows across the yard. She got straight to the point. "I think we need to figure out a schedule for the kids." I crossed my arms. "Already making custody arrangements?" She gave me that same exasperated look, like I was the unreasonable one. "I'm trying to be practical, Ron. We have to co-parent, whether you like it or not." I stared at her, searching for even a hint of guilt. Remorse. Something. But no, she wasn't here to make amends. She was here to negotiate. "I'm not agreeing to anything without a lawyer," I said flatly. She rolled her eyes. "Jesus, Ron. Do you really need to turn this into some legal battle?" I let out a humorless laugh. "Oh, you mean like when you took the kids to your boyfriend's house without telling me?" Her face tightened. "Eric is not my boyfriend." I just stared at her. She sighed. "Fine. That was a bad call. But I was trying to protect them from me." I cut in. She didn't answer. I shook my head, disgusted. "You really are setting this up, aren't you? First, you say I'm too emotional. Now you're implying I'm dangerous. What's next, Chrissy? You gonna start telling people I'm abusive?" Her jaw clenched, but she didn't deny it. That told me everything I needed to know. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. "Listen to me, and listen carefully. You are not taking my kids away from me. You want to co-parent? Fine. We'll figure it out. But if you try to turn this into some power play, I will fight you in court, and I will win. For the first time, I saw something flicker in her expression. Doubt. Maybe even fear. She looked away, composing herself. I don't want to fight you, Ron, she said finally. I just want to move forward. I exhaled, trying to calm myself. Then stop treating me like an obstacle. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. Okay. But I didn't believe her. Not for a second. Because Chrissy wasn't used to losing. And I had the sinking feeling that she wasn't done playing games. Chrissy left that night without another word, but I could feel it. This wasn't over. That doubt I saw in her eyes? It wasn't submission. It was calculation. She was figuring out her next move, and I had to be ready. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Laura, my lawyer. Ron, just got word through my network. Chrissy's lawyered up. I sat up in bed, heart hammering. So that was it then. She wasn't just thinking about a fight, she was preparing for one. Who'd she get? I texted back. Gregory Langston. I swore under my breath. I wasn't deep into the legal world, but even I knew that name. The guy had a reputation for being ruthless in custody battles, twisting narratives, making fathers look like unstable, unfit parents. I called Laura immediately. Not gonna lie, Ron, she said as soon as she picked up. This means she's playing hardball. Langston isn't the type you hire for an amicable split. He's a scorched earth kind of guy. I ran a hand through my hair, pacing my bedroom. What does this mean for me? It means she's coming for custody, Laura said bluntly. Maybe not full custody, but she's definitely going to push for primary. And if she's got Langston, she's going to try and make you look bad in the process. I exhaled sharply. So what do? We get ahead of it, she said. We start gathering character witnesses, making sure everything in your life is spotless. No sudden blow-ups, no reckless decisions. And we document every interaction with Chrissy, every conversation with your kids. If she tries to paint you as an unfit father, we shut it down before it starts. I nodded, determination setting in. All right. Let's do it. I hung up and immediately started making my own calls. First, Dave. She hired Langston, I told him. Dave let out a long, slow breath. Damn it, Chrissy. You know what that means, I said. She's coming for the kids. There was a pause, then Dave said, I'll testify for you. That stopped me in my tracks. What? If this goes to court, he said, I'll stand up and say exactly what I think, that you're a damn good father, and that my daughter is making selfish, reckless decisions. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Dave, that means a lot. She's my daughter, he said, his voice heavy. But she's not right in the head right now. And those kids deserve stability. If that means siding against her in court, then so be it. For the first time in days, I felt like I had an advantage. But I knew Chrissy wasn't going to just sit back and let this happen. She was planning something. And I was about to find out exactly what. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. Chrissy didn't text, didn't call, didn't even check in on the kids. That wasn't like her. She was up to something. And I was right. Friday evening, I was making dinner for the kids when my phone buzzed. Chrissy. I'd like to pick up Jake and Sophie for the weekend. Let's talk about a schedule. I stared at the message. The weekend? After ignoring them all week? No explanation, no apology, just straight to business. I wasn't about to let her jerk the kids around like this, especially since she hadn't even proven where they'd be staying. I responded carefully. Where are you taking them? A few minutes later, her reply came. My apartment. I froze. Your what? I typed back. I got a place. Just temporary. It'll be good for the kids to see both of us adjusting to the new normal. A place? When had she even had time to do that? I called her immediately. She picked up after 2 rings. Ron, she said smoothly, like this wasn't an absolute bombshell. You got an apartment? I asked. Since when? A few days ago, she said casually. I didn't want to spring it on you until things were settled. Settled. Like she'd just decided how this was all going to go. Where? I demanded. In town, she said vaguely. It's nice. 2 bedrooms. Close to the school. I wasn't buying it. So, you just magically found an apartment in a few days? Furnished? Move-in ready. There was a slight pause before she said, I had help. I almost dropped the phone. Eric. She sighed, annoyed. Yes, Ron. Eric helped. He knows a guy who owns the building, and I got approved quickly. Of course. Of course he helped. He was still in this, still hovering in the background like a vulture. I took a breath, gripping the counter. So you're living in an apartment he set up for you, and you want to bring our kids there? Ron, don't make this about him, she snapped. This is about our children needing time with both parents. And I am their mother. I closed my eyes, forcing myself to stay calm. And how do I know he's not going to be there? There was another pause. I wouldn't do that, she said, but her tone wasn't convincing. Yeah. She would do that. I exhaled slowly. No. No, she repeated, her voice sharpening. No, they're not staying with you this weekend, I said firmly. Not until I know where you're living, not until I know Eric isn't involved, and not until we have a proper agreement in place. Her voice turned icy. You don't get to decide that, Ron. I do when it comes to their safety, I shot back. And I'm not letting them be part of whatever fantasy you're playing out with that guy. She let out a bitter laugh. Wow. There it is. You just can't stand the idea of me moving on, can you? I clenched my jaw. This isn't about you, Chrissy. It's about them. Well, she said smoothly, I guess we'll have to let the courts decide, won't we? And just like that, she hung up. I stood there, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles went white. She thought this was a game. She thought she could control the story, manipulate the situation, win. But she'd just made a mistake. Because now she'd made it clear, she wasn't just trying to co-parent. She was trying to take them from me. And I wasn't about to let that happen. The second she hung up, I called Laura. She got an apartment, I said. Eric helped her get it. Laura didn't sound surprised. And she wants the kids there? Yeah. Did you tell her no? Of course. Good, she said. Now we file for temporary custody. I stiffened. Already. Ron, she said, Chrissy's setting up her case. If she gets them overnight, it gives her leverage. She'll say they've adjusted to being with her. We can't let that happen. I exhaled. Okay. Do it. Be ready, Laura warned. She's going to hit back. I already knew that. Chrissy thought she was pulling the strings. She had no idea I was about to cut them the next morning. Chrissy showed up unannounced. She didn't knock, just stormed in like she still lived here. You filed for custody, she snapped, eyes blazing. I stayed calm. I filed to protect my kids. Her hands balled into fists. You're trying to steal them from me. No, I'm making sure they're safe, I said. You moved into an apartment Eric set up for you. You think I'm letting our kids be part of that? Her face turned red. You are unbelievable. No, Chrissy, I said, stepping closer. You are. For the first time, she looked shaken. She knew she was losing control. And she hated it. Chrissy didn't argue much after that. She just stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. But I knew that wasn't the end of it. And I was right. By the afternoon, mutual friends started acting weird. Some ignored my texts. Others sent short, clipped responses. Then Dave called. She's telling people you're trying to cut her out of the kids' lives, he said. Painting you as some controlling, vengeful ek. I exhaled sharply. Of course she is. She's spinning the story, Ron. You need to be careful. I already was. Because Chrissy wasn't just fighting for the kids. She was fighting for the narrative. 2 days later, I got an email from Chrissy's lawyer. She was officially filing for primary custody. I barely had time to process it before Sophie came to me that night, hesitant, eyes full of worry. Mom said you're trying to take us away from her, she said quietly. Is that true? I felt something in my chest crack. No, sweetheart, I said gently. I just want to make sure you and Jake are safe. She bit her lip. Mom says you're just mad at her. I clenched my jaw. This isn't about me and Mom. It's about you. She looked unsure, conflicted. Chrissy had gotten to her. And that's when I knew. Chrissy wasn't just fighting for custody. She was fighting to turn my own kids against me. And I couldn't let that happen. I looked at Sophie, my heart aching. This was it, the moment Chrissy had been working toward. She wanted to twist things until even my own kids questioned me. I crouched down, meeting Sophie's eyes. "Listen to me," I said softly. "No matter what happens between me and Mom, I love you and Jake more than anything. That will never change." She hesitated, then nodded slowly. I could see it. The doubt Chrissy planted wasn't fully taking root. Not yet. But I had to act now. The next morning, I met with Laura. "File for full custody," I said. Chrissy crossed the line. Laura nodded. "This will get ugly." "I know," I said. "But I'm not losing my kids." 2 days later, Chrissy was served. She called me, screaming. I let her rant, let her throw every accusation in the book. Then finally, I cut her off. "You did this, Chrissy," I said. "You made this war. Now you get to live with it." Silence. Then she hung up. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something like relief. Chrissy had tried to control the story. But in the end, I was the one who finished it.